All right. Well, welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Land Stories Live. I am your host, Dave Deniston of Generation Family Properties, LLC, where our goal is to help hundreds of people just like you own land. And most of all, we want to tell your land story. Well, my friends, I have in back of me, if you are watching this live, a beautiful treed property. And I wonder if you can guess where it is. So we're playing the guessing game again today. And feel free to make a chat comment in the notes here to see if you can tell me where this is. What is the state? What is the county? And what is the nearest city? And I'll bring on Christy here shortly to talk more about that. Now, in the meantime, before Christy comes on, I want to tell you a little bit about, so let's say you buy land, right? Well, what in the world can you do with it? So here's a few things that I bet some of these you have thought about. Maybe some of these haven't with all this beautiful land that you get. And some of this obviously depends upon kind of where you are. Certain areas may allow this, some may not. So let's talk about number one first. Building a spec home. So obviously you can build a home, could be single family, could be multifamily, could be a duplex. And in most cases, of course, a lot of the vacant lots we deal with are zoned just for that reason. Another thing that you could think about is maybe having a community garden on your land. So Seth, I'll give him a shout out at Ari Tipster if you ever happen to go to his website. These are where some of these ideas are coming from. Having a community garden. So if your lot is a nice size, maybe you could help do something for the community. Have everyone chip in and buy seeds and plants, and you can grow food and not have to be dependent on going to the grocery store. Another thing that you could definitely think about on a lot of pieces of land is farming, right? Of course, you can farm on it. So depending upon the size of the property, the type of soil, some parcels could be very well suited for farming. And you may not even have to farm it yourself. I have quite a few people that actually lease their property where someone kind of rents it from them to farm on the land. So definitely something worth taking a look at. Something else you could look to do, of course, is to harvest timber. So we have many properties like this property right behind me that has trees on it. So of course you could cut down the land, cut down the trees, some of the trees on the land, and you could make some good money from timber if it's the right kind of tree. So definitely think about that. But speaking of trees, maybe rather than selling it, maybe you could plant something, whether you grow apples or oranges or pears or grapefruits or lemons or nuts. Think about maybe doing an orchard out on your property. Now, of course, if you are farming, right, we got to think about another potential use, which is bringing on some livestock onto there. You could have sheep or goats or cows or who knows. Well, looks like Christy is here with me. Let me bring Christy on in. Christy, can you hear me? Christy?
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. All right.
Good.
Christy's here with us.
Awesome. Hello.
All right, Christy. So I'm just going through some you want to turn on your camera there. Going through some different ways people use land. One of the ways that I think people don't think enough about, Christy, is using their land as easement access. Most of the properties we buy tend to have road access, but maybe there is a property around someone close by where they don't, right? They are like landlocked. There's no road going to their property. And so maybe you could sell part of your land as a road, as an easement to a neighbor. What do you think about that idea?
Yep, I've actually seen that happen before. I know we've talked about my parents' property before. They had to do that exact thing. They didn't actually sell it. They bought it from a neighbor before
Oh,
they realized there was going to be a big access into the whole property. So it ends up not being used. But yeah, I would imagine it's quite common if you get a big parcel of land and somebody splits it into lots of little ones, that the people in the middle might sometimes have some access problems.
right. Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
What's your experience with most of the properties we buy? What's your opinion? Do you think in general is access an issue? What's kind of some of your experience with that?
I've not seen any with access issue. They all have access. There's very few that would maybe even require a 4x4. That's a question that people will ask a lot. Oh, am I going to need a big truck to get in?
Yeah.
But I would say the majority of our properties, no. A majority have gravel road for sure, gravel or dirt, but they all are pretty well maintained.
Well, I think it is interesting that sometimes people get enamored with like having a 20 or a 40 acre property, but it doesn't have any access, right?
Yeah.
And so people might wonder, why is this property priced so cheaply? And those kind of things can come up. Any other thoughts you have kind of about access and
Well, that
using?
actually leads me to just a question in general that I don't know the answer to, which is, what do you do if you have a 20-acre property with no access? How do you access
Right? Yeah. Well, you can do it illegally. Use
it?
Go through someone else's land to go through it. But yeah, it's a question that might have to be brought up with the county in terms
Okay.
of. So I'd recommend if someone ever comes across a property, let's say it's a large acreage like you're talking about, like a 40 acre or 100 acre type property. Sometimes there can be BLM land next to those. So it might be possible that the government allows you to get to the property. But it'd be interesting to bring on someone from a county to talk about, which is something I'm looking forward to. What happens when you have a property that doesn't have access, and how does that work? So,
Yeah. Because I would imagine too, it might be nice if you meet the neighbor and they say, oh, sure, you can drive, no problem. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to sell it or something. And then the next neighbors are going to say, no, no, you can't drive on this anymore. And,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
okay, that
absolutely.
could be an issue.
Another idea that is on this blog post from Ari Tipster that I think is a really good one for people to consider with raw vacant land is there's so many people I talk to that they want to be able to store stuff on their land. Well, what if you built like a self-storage facility, right? That
Mm.
way, maybe if you have 10 acres, you sell 5 of it and you build a storage facility. You could start out small, but then people could store their stuff where they
Mm.
don't have to worry about someone else breaking in on some of these areas that are so far away. Have you ever used storage facilities at all, Christy, yourself?
I have only used a storage facility when moving. We were building a house and it was in between. The first house sold fast, and we used it then. But um, my father has a boat and they store it. So as soon as you said that, it made me think of some of those properties we have near White Mountain Lake.
Yeah.
And I know those properties aren't big, but if let's say they were bigger, if it was a bigger property and you're near a lake, you could just set up like a boat storage or something like that, where you could keep people's boats covered and safe. And then they could just pop in on weekends, grab their boat, and go out to the lake. Yeah.
Great point. Totally.
Yeah.
And of course, you have
Yeah.
to make sure that the zoning is right for these sorts of ideas. But I'm just throwing them out there.
Yeah.
Other things that people could look to do if you have the gas and mineral rights to a land is you could drill for oil or gas. And I know some people are concerned if they don't get the oil and mineral rights. Maybe we can talk about that briefly. But certainly that's something you could look to do. I find the vast majority of lots we have don't usually come with oil and mineral rights. Christy, have you had any conversations with any of the counties about, well, if you don't have mineral rights, does that mean someone could drill on your land? Do you have any thoughts or questions about that?
I only have two experiences with that, and that is with both of our properties. One, actually, the person that we bought it from had the mineral rights
Mhm.
and wanted to keep them,
Mhm.
but contingent on the sale, we were like, no, no, we want them. So we
Mhm.
got them. But the other property, I think somebody has them from 50 years ago and just never gave them up. And I feel like that's pretty common. People, once the whole, the Clampetts got rich on oil, people are like, oh, I'm not giving my mineral rights up just in case. Which I can't blame them, but, you know. So do you find that most properties have mineral rights from somebody 10 owners back, from ages ago?
Oh yeah, yeah. What from what I understand, and having looked into this, I don't pretend to be a mineral and oil drilling expert, but what I've heard and seen is that the mineral rights are often held by like railroad companies, and a lot of the places where we tend to have land, where the railroad company bought tracts and tracts of land years and years ago. A lot of these companies may even no longer exist. So it's kind of one of those things that has to be tracked back literally like 100 or even 200 years back to see who owns the rights to it. And as I've talked to the county, many counties actually, several times about this question, what I've been told is that as a landowner, that you have the rights to even if you don't have mineral rights, you have rights to anything on the ground. And so it's not like an oil company can come and start like drilling on your property if they have the mineral rights. They'd still have to pay you to get onto the land. Every county I've talked to has always said that. So if I was, as we do, buy pieces of land, I'm really not that concerned if we get mineral rights. If we do, it's always a bonus that we love to pass on to people. But I don't know, it's just not something that I'm concerned about. Plus, in many of these counties, frankly, they don't really allow oil drilling anyhow. So that's been my experience so far.
Okay. Well, I guess the biggest thing is people obviously can still drill for a well even without it. And then they can, like you said, I know if an oil company does come onto your property and they do it and they set up their wells, they still have to pay you till they lease that property from you, the ground property. So you're still taken care of and you can still say no. So
that's
or
it.
yes, want the money.
That's it.
I have to be honest, I'd probably say yes.
Yes. No, it's interesting. It's interesting thing. Another thing that particularly out in Oregon that people could think about using their land for is planting a vineyard, right? There are so many good wine growing regions, whether it's California, Washington, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Virginia, are all kind of renowned regions because it tends to be a little cooler and good for wine. So definitely you could rent out your land to someone that wants to have a vineyard, or you could grow some yourself. I actually had a client that's on a Oregon property that is growing grapes on his yard. So definitely.
Is he gonna send you a bottle of wine?
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Another use that I do see some people do, part of the reason I find people want to buy land, Christy, which is kind of interesting, is like they are concerned about getting nuked or like the world falling apart, and they want a place to run to. So definitely they're kind of called preppers, that if they want to have like a underground shelter, someplace that they can go run to in the event of disaster, you definitely could do that kind of thing on raw land. Have you ever seen any of those before?
The Doomsday Preppers, that Discovery Channel show.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Of course I've seen that. It's good.
We were in New Zealand in February, my wife and I were, and apparently like there's a lot of preppers that like rich ones, like Peter Thiel, that was helping to launch PayPal and Facebook and some of the money behind that. Like people, like land there has gone up millions of dollars because there's a bunch of people that have gone into Queenstown area in New Zealand to do that.
I guess you'd want to find land that you could then live off for a while. So it would make sense to go to like fertile. I could see that being popular in Colorado or Oregon, where you just start cultivating your own food and doing your own thing.
Right. Something else, and this is actually something that a client did. He's someone that kind of does adventures with people, and he turned the property, this is a property in Oregon, into an outdoor shooting range, to go take people out to and get out to nature a little bit. And so he put up some straw bales and stuff like that and got permission from the county to have it be a shooting range. How cool is that?
That's very cool. I could see like even like summer camps and stuff like that. Yeah.
So there's so many different uses for land. Another one that I think is kind of fun that we've seen is like an outdoor obstacle course. You know, you build like an outdoor obstacle course that people can go through. So like between trees is a really fun way to do it. So that would be a real cool, like adult playground for people to go to.
A lot of companies will use that as like a team building exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those places.
Another our last use in the name of New Zealand is you could build your own hobbit hole, an earth bermed house. So those are kind of fun. You actually, what's cool about those is that you don't get nearly as hot in the summer when you build an earth berm house like this, because you keep the cooling, and it doesn't take as much fuel for heating in the winter. So I think it's another great use if you have some hills on your property. Anything else that you can think of, Christy? And other uses of land I haven't covered?
You did pretty good.
All right.
When I first came on, I heard you talk about like the gardening and the hobby farms. I feel like that would be very popular. Just get out and have animals and smell the fresh air.
That's it. Get away from traffic, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, it is your turn now. So why don't we have this property behind me. I teased it at the beginning. People are probably wondering, what is this? Where is this property? Tell us all about it, Christy.
This is Tiburon, New Mexico. I'm covering this because I think it is such a cool area. And it's trees in New Mexico, which I think I said this when I did a Tiburon before. I'm a typical person that probably thinks it's all desert, and it's not. They see this picture. Let me pull up some pictures here too, and then I'll share my screen so that everybody can see more pictures of it. So tell me when you can see it, and then can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Hopefully this isn't going to give me too much trouble.
So this is in Otero County, New Mexico, for people that may not be familiar with the area here. So it's tucked away up in the mountains near National Forest. Okay, Christy, go ahead. I can see your screen.
Is it up? Okay, cool. Yeah, well, you're talking about the mountains. So it's the Sacramento Mountains. And there's the Lincoln National Forest and the Oliver Lee State Forest. They're all around it. So it's just absolutely full of forest. And you can see the views. And this is where we were talking a little bit earlier with the access and the dirt roads. So this is a very well-maintained dirt road, though. This isn't anything that you would even need a 4x4 for. And this particular community, you just pay $30 a year. Every property pays $30 a year for the road maintenance. So it's not going to get worse. It's going to stay like this. It's not like, oh, the county just did it and they're not coming back for 10 years. It actually stays maintained. So you'll always get nice trees, awesome rocks, minerals, all kinds of stuff. I thought that was so cool looking too. Just very unique. And this property in particular slope, it's 2.27 acres. So it's the biggest one we've had in this area, which is exciting because a lot of them are half an acre, which is great. That's a lot. It's more than just a normal neighborhood house for sure. But when you start talking 2+ acres, I feel like people can really do some cool stuff with it. That's when you can really start doing like, oh, I want to have a storage, or I want to have a camp, or this or that. You can do something with 2.5 acres. You can have animals. It just opens up, I feel like, a whole world of stuff to do. The weather here is really good, mid-80s in the summer. It does snow. They get about 20 inches of snow a year, actually. And there's a ski resort not too far away called Ski Cloudcroft, where you can ski and go tubing and snowboarding. In the summer, there's all kinds of hiking. We talk about the forests. There's a trail in there called Osha Trail. Absolutely beautiful. It's just a really outdoorsy place that you could truly use all year round. I keep looking at some of the pictures. So it's just pretty. Oh, and power. That's a big one, of course, to mention. This one has power and water. So the water goes through the neighborhood. It's a $650 fee to hook it up, which isn't bad. And then it's $61 a year. So we talked about the $30 a year, $61 a year, and then the taxes are only about $40 a year. So if you buy this property and you don't touch it again for 10 years, you're only looking at about $130 a year to own it. You know, it's not going to cost you a lot of money in taxes. You're not going to get a huge tax bill. And
Yeah, no.
nice big tree.
And what are some of the nearest kind of cities, Christy, that's closest to this that people might be familiar with?
Yeah, so Tiburon itself is 15 minutes away. So that's kind of a small town. Las Cruces is about 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
El Paso is about 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely doable for a weekend place. That's not a bad drive at all. Hunting is really popular out here. We actually sold a property, the first property we got here, to a guy who goes hunting almost every weekend out here. He's from Carlsbad, which is also only about 30 minutes away, 40 minutes, I think. Mm-hmm. And he says this area is absolutely amazing for hunting as well. So he said, I come out there all the time anyway. I'm going to buy my own property and use it. He's going to build a little cabin and hunt from his cabin, which I think is really cool. Yeah, so the power is pretty cool.
That is so exciting. Yeah, the power, if we had a plat map available, the power's like, you can see it's running between kind of two properties. So it's kind of like on the back side of the parcel. So it's not running like on the street, which is kind of interesting and different. But the power is there and water is on the front of the street. You can see all these great trees, obviously 2 acres. Yeah, and terrain. So certainly you could build a house on it and a cabin on it, you know, all those different kinds of things you can do. One of the other areas I think is pretty cool that's nearby this property is White Sands. So White Sands, I think, is just a couple hours away from this property. So if you want to get to desert, it's not that far away. Here's a GIS map.
There we go. And it's a nice rectangle shape too. It's not some awkward, shape to build. You can see they're all nice big rectangles.
And you can see kind of to the west there's a neighbor. Down to the southeast, there's a neighbor over there, but there's not like a neighbor on top of you. As a matter of fact, if anyone was interested and wanted to buy some of the neighboring parcels, we definitely could look into that for you. So that's something that we're happy to, we can't promise, but we certainly can try, whether it's a property, any adjacent property, we could look to do that. So any other thoughts, Christy, about this area, this property you want to share?
No, I just think it's a great place if you love the outdoors and want to get away a lot. Because I know some properties, you can't go in the winter because it snows too bad, or other places you might want to get away from the heat. If you want to get away from the really cold, you come here. If you want to get away from the hot, you come here. You really just come here and actually just stay. Don't leave. Really no reason to leave, I don't think.
Well, I think the other cool thing about this property that I think a lot of us would appreciate is that you can actually disconnect here. Like there's no cell phone signal. You can have a satellite phone though to still stay in touch and talk to people, and obviously there's internet access and some of those things, but if you want to just get away and not have to deal with your cell phone buzzing every 5 minutes, it is a perfect place to go do that.
I've heard an excuse so your boss or your employees can't bother you. You're truly going away. It's like a forced vacation.
Yes. And what's the pricing on this property, Christy?
Cash, it's $14,999. Mm-hmm. Pretty good. And then if you finance, it's $16,499, and it's $749 down, and that breaks up $500. You get immediate equity, and $249 goes towards the document fee and the loan setup fee. And the minimum payments are $299 a month. So you can always pay more. Mm-hmm. There's never a prepayment penalty. So
if you want to put a higher down payment, you're certainly welcome to. If you want to do a higher monthly payment, you're welcome to. Absolutely. Cool. Any other final thoughts, Christy?
No. But if you like it, hurry, because I bet this one's not going to last long.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
We just put it up for sale today, so.
But I know probably a week from now, you're going to be putting it out on Facebook to the general public and marketplace and buy sell groups. And gosh, our experience has been these particular properties don't last longer than 2 weeks once you do that. So
yeah, go fast. Go fast.
And Christy, if people want to contact you for the property, where can they reach you?
Yep, 917-248-6715. Call or text. If I don't answer, just leave a message. Or if you prefer, email at sales@genfamland.com.
Perfect.
I'll get right back with you.
Thank you so much, Christy. All right, my friends, well, that wraps it up for today. Tune in every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Central, Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. Central. And if you have a question about land, feel free to send them to me, contact@genfamproperties.com, or of course, submit them through Facebook. Well, thank you so much for tuning into Land Stories with me, Dave Deniston, and Christy. Make sure to check out all of our properties at www.genfamproperties.com. And if you are particularly interested in this property, Christy, once again, where can they get a hold of you?
971-248-6715 or sales@genfamland.com.
All right. There we go, my friends. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.